for business and communities. To guide us, we have a leading expert, Guy Bigwood. For many years, Guy has helped cities and major events around the world turn sustainability ideas into real action. He will be discussing practical steps for a sustainable future in a conversation with our moderator, Patrick Dilani. Please welcome them.
Good morning and welcome to our first webinar of 2026. I'm so delighted to be here, and thank you again to our colleagues in EPUM for their continued support in organizing this morning's seminar and our seminars in general to ensure that everyone involved in the business events industry in Macau and Beijing and the Greater Bay Area has access to the best and most up-to-date learning in our industry. So we're delighted to start our session this morning with the topic of Sustainability Trends 2026. And there's no doubt as we move into 2026, sustainability is shaping how events are designed, how they're delivered, and certainly how they are measured. And we're going to go and look at those trends, see which of the trends are the most important, more importantly, how we turn those trends into action, and how we can use sustainability as a competitive advantage. Now, to do that is a very tall order, but I cannot think of anybody I would like to have guiding us through those questions than my good friend, Guy Bigwood, who is the CEO and Chief Changemaker for the Global Destination Sustainability Movement. Guy, you're very welcome.
Good morning from Barcelona.
Great to have you. Now, Guy, you're not a stranger. Before we start, you're not a stranger to Macau.
No, not at all. I've been many, many, many times. So,
And you're blessed with a spouse who is from that region, from Hong Kong, and
yeah, I'm lucky to have family from Hong Kong. I often pop across the bridge, or in the old days on the ferry, to come to Macau, and so I got very core part of what I've done, and I worked quite a lot with the Sands and Venetian and other people in the region as well.
Yeah, so an expert on many levels as well as the local scene. So, Guy, thank you for agreeing to participate in our webinar. As I said, I can't think of anybody who I know is as esteemed and as knowledgeable as yourself in these areas. So, can I just remind all our viewers that they have the opportunity to ask questions. So we'd be delighted if they want to send those questions in on the chat, so that we can put them to Guy. And if we don't get them to Guy during the session itself, we'll make sure that we answer your questions later on. So delighted. Guy, how will we do it? Will I hand over the stage to you, and then we can have a discussion after that?
Yeah, and if you think I've talked too much, just jump in and ask a question at any moment. I'm really happy to stop. We've divided this. Pat and I have thought about this. We kind of divided with a presentation for a bit more than half, and then a conversation between us. But please do ask us questions. It does make it much more enjoyable and more relevant. So I'll start, shall I? Shall I share my screen and off we go? Can you see that? Is that good? Can you see that?
Looking good.
Good. So we've called it My Sustainability Trends, What Matters Now. And I don't think the sound would work, but if I play this, I want you to imagine you're at a Coldplay concert. Coldplay, many of you know that music. It's out there, it's booming. You've got thousands of people listening to that. Well, Coldplay did something really, really amazing. They said, we will not tour anymore unless there's a different way that we can tour. And this was in 2003. They said this. They said, this is terrible. The way we're touring is just making mass environmental impact. We're not making a social impact. So we're going to stop doing it. So they said, we're not going to come out until we can make our tour as low carbon and sustainable as possible. So they set themselves 3 goals. Excuse me. They want to reduce the emissions and consumption of the materials and recycle extensively. They want to reinvent and use new green technologies. They want to restore by funding nature and technology. So they started a real big journey. And here's some of the highlights of that last Music of the Spheres tours. I know this was in Tokyo. It came to China. I'm not sure if it came to Macau. So, you know, they had some really big impacts in terms of reducing their energy, their carbon emissions, fueling sustainable aviation fuels, reducing food waste, changing how they source their food. And this was amazing. And I wanted to start with this case study because what they did was put sustainability on the main stage. So my question to all of you, whether you're a venue, a destination person, a hotel, a consultancy, are you on main stage with your sustainability program? And how does it need to adapt for 2026? So that's the big question, right? So how are we going to look at that? We're going to look at what's changed since 2023. What are some of those kind of trends? And I've got 10 trends, actually, not 9. I added another one. We want to go, what does that mean? What does that mean? What matters now for Macau because of those trends? And then really start to think of sustainability or actually regeneration as a competitive advantage. As Pat says, I've been working in sustainability for, I think, 23 years this year. Pat and I used to work at MCI together, where I was a sustainability director. I was also the managing director of Spain. So I've got a lot of experience running agencies, running PCOs, organizing events, and then being a sustainability director of a big global corporation. And then since 2019, I set up the GDS movement, and we work as a consultancy. Actually, we say we're a change agency, and we work with, I think we work with over 150 destinations around the world, corporate and association event organizers. So I'm going to share a little bit about what I've learned in that journey and what I'm learning every day. So what has changed? So let's kind of step back and look at some of those macro changes, right? What has happened? I think many of you may know that it's getting hotter, wetter, and wilder. Climate change is increasing and will increase. This is at the end of the road from my house in Valencia. I'm not sure if you saw last year, we had terrible storms in Valencia. 200 people died. But across China, across Asia, you've seen many, many similar storms. And we're going to see more of that, unfortunately. Climate change is going to get wilder, it's going to get wetter, it's going to get hotter. All right.
It's interesting, Guy. I was just attending the UK-Ireland ICA summit in Scotland over the weekend, and we've had some serious floods in the UK and in Ireland. So just practical evidence, as you say, of wetter, wilder, and an awful lot more intense weather activity.
We'll take a lozenge. So what does that mean? It means that there's going to be greater instability for event professionals in the future. We're going to see these storms affecting our economic impacts, especially as venues and hotels and destinations. It's going to affect our assets. It's going to affect our events. There's going to be more instability. Our insurance will go up in many places. In LA, you can't get insurance, right, for a lot of places because of fires and climate change. Other places is up 10, 15, 20% insurance. So there's things here which is a bit scary, a bit upsetting, really. And unfortunately, this is going to carry on getting more and more exponentially impactful. So if we're going to look at that, we have on the left-hand side a lot of scary stuff, and it's exponentially going to get worse. But there's always a flip side, and there's a rosy side. There's a lot of amazing stuff happening exponentially in terms of what's good and what's great. And you guys been in Macau, you're in such a great location because I think China is really driving a lot of this change. So let me give you an example. There's been a 515% increase in renewable energy capacity around the world since 2000. It's over 2,000% in China. China has implemented more sustainable energy, renewable energy than the rest of the world put together in the last 3 years. So it's really exciting. And because of the innovation happening across China, innovation is happening at such a fast rate that it's driving down the premium cost to be sustainable. So solar panels, just as an example, 90% with price reduction over the last 20 years, driven by Chinese businesses. If we look at, as another example, energy management systems, the new AI management systems are driving 40% reductions in energy management and energy costs in hotels and venues. These new AI systems, again, many of them driven by Chinese businesses. So it's really exciting on a macro level what's happening. And that's going to catalyze a lot of what we do. There'll be new materials, new solutions. So environmentally, I think it's a really, really exciting time for new technology and solutions. What does that mean? What does that mean? And what are those trends in mice, to be very much more specific? So let's start with the 10 trends. So number one, sustainability is definitely on the center stage. So ECA did a survey last year, and they do one every year. 73% of event professionals indicate that sustainability is incorporated within their event planning. If we look at the corporate world, it's about 70% with the Amex survey from 2024. Other ones I've seen for 25 are around the same numbers. So it is on stage. But we often hear two things, right? And you must have seen this, Pat. You hear what people say and what people do, right? So we have something we call the attitude is what we say and behavior is what we do. So there's always a gap. Typically, there's another piece of data here. 66% of associations say that it's very important, but only 34% do it. So we not always see that. But what we're seeing is that gap getting smaller and smaller and smaller. When I first started doing this, my first research, I think it was 5% said it was important and 0% were doing it. So we've come a long way since 2005 or 6 when I started working on this. So I'm happy with this. The interesting thing is we see more and more action in Asia now, and faster action than perhaps in Europe. So, and definitely the US. We're not even going to include the US at the moment in these conversations.
Guy, you know what? We've already got a question in. You've obviously
cool.
stimulated one of our listeners. So I believe Grania, you going to put Chloe in directly, or do you want me to ask the question on her behalf? Or is it Rebecca? I see different names coming up. Rebecca, you should be able to ask that question directly. Go right ahead. Obviously, the figures are so stark, Guy, that you've got a reaction immediately because they are pretty impressive figures.
Mhm.
Okay, we have the desire for a question, but we don't seem to have the ability yet to connect.
Okay, well, let's
Okay,
carry
let's
on.
move on, and we'll make sure we get that answer during the session at some stage.
But there's some really crazy stuff in the data I've seen, and makes me laugh, and I've seen this a lot in reality. So we got 50% from this recent survey by ECA, who said 50% associations, they say cost is a barrier. Okay, cost is a barrier. Okay. Then 46% said we're happy to pay a little bit more.
Oh,
And we see this very much. We see this. I kind of always think there's 3 levels. You've got the guys who do not care, right? They don't want to do that. In fact, they're probably anti-sustainability. You've got the mid chunk who actually will do it if there's no cost impact and they actually like it, right? And then you've got the top level who the people are happy to pay more. And that niche is growing. Used to be about 3%. Now I see it 15%. And in some places, some markets even more. So we do listen, which means it's more complicated because now in your marketing and your actions, you have to kind of work out very quickly what type of client it is. And then you have to kind of align your value proposition to how that client is reacting. I'm not sure if Rebecca's got a question. If we want to fire it, well, I'm happy to hear Rebecca's question, or she can put it in the chat box.
Rebecca?
Well, if you want to, just jump in, Rebecca. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
carry
We'll
on.
get to it.
So we've definitely seen over the last few years an increase of RFPs, of sustainability criteria coming in RFPs. In the corporate world, I think the best research is the Amex research. Last one said 58%. GBTA's research said 53% are now there. So we're seeing a big rise. If we look at associations, it's not quite as good. It's about 20%, but that has come up a long way. And there's going to be a lot of focus from ECA and other association initiatives in the next few years to change that. So expect that to change. And I think that's the key trend. It is changing. In fact, in agencies such as MCI, we never have any major bid that doesn't have sustainability. In the destination world that I do, there's no bid that is never mentioned. So I think it's kind of 100% in a lot of the work that you and me do together, Pat, right?
Yeah.
So at the same time, our clients, and I think you, me, and everyone else, we're a bit skeptical. Not sure. Do you really believe those claims? It's the greenest thing. It's the most sustainable thing. So in a trip.com, so heavily influenced by Chinese people here as well, 32% doubted the authenticity of sustainable products and initiatives. And we're seeing more of that. We're seeing more skepticism, more disbelief. So that means there's a next trend. And I'll give you an example. When the EU did some research a few years ago, they found over 50% of the claims of sustainable products, I'm not talking about tourism, or any sustainable product or event, was not true or unfounded or couldn't be backed up.
Wow, give us that statistic again. What was the
50%?
50%? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it's actually higher now.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean there's lying. It means it's just not backed up, or maybe there's a bit of excitement gone in. So the EU and many governments around the world, Canada, Australia, Japan, Singapore, and many more, I said that's enough. We need regulation. We have to have less greenwashing, more honesty. So there's a whole series of legislation coming out. The EU, as typical in legislation world, right, has said, have they come up with clear guidance, and then everyone's copied that. So we've been working a lot in this world because I think it is really impactful. So let's just look at one of these, and I'm going to use the European legislation because it pretty much everyone kind of cuts and pastes that around the world. So this new transition that comes out in September of this year says, and this is going to be every country in the EU, right? So 26 countries. There will be a ban on vague and generic sustainability claims. So you can't say this product is sustainable, eco, green, responsible, climate friendly. You won't be able to say that anymore unless there's a very clear explanation and evidence to back that up. So claims must be objective and verifiable. Again, you've got to back up things. You can't have misleading overall claims. Well, that's fair enough. You shouldn't be able to do that in any advertising anywhere. It means that certifications and labels, green key, green globe, all of those have to be really explained. So you can't say I'm sustainable because I have a certification. You have to say the certification evaluates and ensures that my management system or my energy or my recycling is done properly. Yes, be careful on your images. So visual green clues, images have to be clear. So all those green windmills. We've all seen that marketing. You're going to have to get better than that. And governments all around the world are giving much stronger enforcement powers. So we've seen this already. These laws are, even though they're draft laws, are already been used against the airlines. So KLM, Air France, Lufthansa have already been taken to court and lost battles. We've seen energy companies in Australia. So there's a lot of stuff happening. So what does that mean?
And guys, sorry, if we want to keep an eye on what's happening, and I know you've given examples from Australia and Canada all over the world, is the EU a good standard to keep an eye of? If it's happening in the EU, it's going to translate or migrate or filter or seep into everybody else's legislation.
And that's the question, right? So there's a couple of things. Think of GPDR. It is exactly the same law, right? It's a law created for European citizens, but anyone in the world has to comply with it if they're communicating to EU citizens. Does the EU prosecute people in China or Australia for not complying? That's a question, right? Will it be implemented? But in law, and this affects the big guys normally, right? So, but some other things. So, but if there's hoteliers here at the moment, they want to get their hotels onto Booking.com, Expedia, all those guys, the OTAs. That's managed by an organization now called Travelist, who manage these sustainability claims. They will only accept hotels that have a credible, accredited certification program according to EU law. So you won't be able to say your hotel is on, put it on Booking.com unless you have a European accredited certification. So there's a lot happening in this space, right? And we're going to see this coming out. So we've been working in Canada, looking at the Canadian law, pretty much the same. We've been looking at Singapore law, pretty much the same. So what does this mean? It means that in 2026, sustainability is no longer about intention and big claims about we're going to do this. It's about what have you done and the evidence to back it up. And this drives the next kind of 5 trends now, really. So trend 6 here is that you're going to see a move from carbon pledges to carbon performance. Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative, big initiative launched by JMIC. We're going to commit, destinations committing to this. But there's been not enough action, not enough kind of real performance. So we're going to see at the level of that, but also at the business level, less obsession with kind of, talking about the pledge, but more obsession about doing stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about perfect numbers. It's about, reducing some emissions. It's about looking at what makes a difference. Right? As an event organizer, we're looking at attendee travel, accommodation, trucking. So we're going to be having to look at those key areas and make efforts to, improve the big things. It's less about plastic straws, I think is my summary for this one. We spent thousands of hours trying to reduce plastic straws in our bars and our events, or plastic spoons. Great, but that doesn't always make the biggest difference. So that kind of then leads into the next trend, which is really, it's all about data, evidence, and credibility. So we're going to see a rise and usage of more tools. We use a tool such as Trace, which is probably one of the best in the world. We also have something used called Climate, but there's thousands of these tools. These tools will have to be accredited in the future to kind of line up with EU regulation or other regulation from around the world. We're going to see a focus on kind of less KPIs and less indicators, but better ones. It's too much stuff. What are the 3, what are the 4, what are the 5 key things we need to be thinking? We're going to see much more integration of data between systems. So Trace will connect with Cvent, already is. Cvent will connect to Booking.com. So we're going to see more of this stuff. We're going to see more AI driven into this to make it easier. So this is quite exciting. I think measurement's going to get much easier. Probably that is actually a trend here I should have written. But I think measurement's going to get a lot easier, and we're going to be doing it more and much better. So then connects to the next kind of trend here, really, which is around better communication, right? Because the laws required us to communicate better. So how do we do that? So we do that with data, right? So here's an example. This is a congress we've worked on for the last few years. And it's ESCRS, so it's the cataract surgeons. It's a 16,000 person congress. So a big congress, type of big events you get in Macau. And so here we're being very specific, very honest. We're saying, we're rethinking how we use sustainable, how we use materials, how we build stuff. So you can see that nice green carpet. That's made from sustainable materials. But I can't just say it's a recycled carpet. I have to say 92% of that carpet is made from sustainable materials. I have to get much more specific in the future. And that is, assessed or audited by the GDS movement. So people have to say things like that. If we're talking about the whole show, they're saying 80% of our materials were reused, donated, or repurposed. And there's data behind that. There's graphs. We're saying, 50% of our waste is recycled. We switch to using 100% rewind carpet. I don't explain that very well, but those type of things, we have to be much more explicit. Which is good. I think that's much more credible, right? That type of action. But I'll give you an example of actually ESCRS, what we won't be able to do in the future. So we have goals, which is net zero for this event. According to the new legislation in Europe, we won't be able to say net zero unless we have a scientific plan that says we'll be able to get there. And we don't have that today. We don't know how we're going to do that. So things like that, be careful, will change everything. And again, China's different. Things will happen different in Macau and China, but these winds of change will affect stuff and shape how, international buyers coming into the region will think. Local buyers may be different, but I know from other areas we've seen these winds of change happen. And remember that China has the most aggressive sustainability agenda in the world at the moment. So you're going to see this. Food, if we wanted 11th trend, food is still one of the biggest kind of areas for mobilizing change and sustainability. It's still one of the best ways to communicate tangibly around sustainable. And so we can talk about less single-use plastic in the menus and the food we serve. We can talk about more regional source. We can talk about great products. And we can talk about better healthy food. Across Asia, across China, we've seen this switch to the more wellness, how we're thinking of menu design. And so that means, in terms of what we're talking about now, that means we need better data to back up those claims. So again, this is from ESCRS, so that Congress I was talking about that goes around Europe. Here we're saying, we're committed to sustainability because we've eliminated 98% of red meat. We have 62% of the food we serve is vegetarian. 30% of the ingredients are local. We've eliminated 71,000 single-use bottles. So very, very specific. And of course, if we have the data, we can make better choices. We can say if it's right, if it's wrong. We don't aim to make this event 100% vegetarian, but we want to make it more balanced, better, better health for the planet, for the people, for everyone, right? It's a big economic driver to this as well. A more balanced, a more cost-effective menu as well. If we had 100% red meat, it'd be a lot more expensive, the menus. So, we change, things. So we change red meat to chicken, and we go from that much chicken down to this much chicken. So it's healthier, more cost-effective, better for the menus, and people love it. People love it. So that's a kind of, one of the things around food. Again, better communication, more data. What does this mean? There's a reverse side. There's a kind of a negative side to this, is that we're going to see more greenwashing. And this hurts me. We're going to see people who are a bit more scared in the future to communicate. We're already seeing that. Already around 50% of the destinations that we analyze around the world, over 100 of those every year, are not properly communicating their sustainability strategy on the website. Recent piece of research by the University of Surrey in the UK said 70% of hotels don't communicate their practices. Eco, 36% of association event organizers are not talking about their goals. So we see this already today, and I believe it's going to get worse. So that kind of affects me, that upsets me, and we've got to tackle that, because it means our audiences don't know what's going on. But if we look at the counter arguments, if we ask how many of the attendees are interested in sustainability, it's 80 to 90% are interested to know what's going on. Will they change their habit? Maybe not. It's that behavior attitude gap. But they're interested to know what's going on. So there is a market out there for this. People are listening. And that makes a difference. So that's,
Interesting.
yeah, please.
Interesting point, Guy, which is a very good segue to one of the questions that have come in from Dan Ho at SANS, who are very committed to sustainability and have a very dedicated program. But he wants us to, they're very, very practical here. How can venues or hotels use sustainability practice to influence the client to choose a venue or destination over another, even if the cost of hosting that event in the venue is higher? So the classic question, and you've rightly identified that dichotomy between what customers may say they want, deep down in their hearts, they actually
Yeah.
probably want that. But okay, how do we go and communicate with those customers to say, here are the benefits, here's why you should use my venue, my hotel,
Yeah.
my
And I
service?
think there's a few things to unpack there. So let's, first thing is, as I said before, there's three types of clients, right? I think, let's simplify it. Those that don't care, those that do care, if it's not a hassle, it doesn't cost them more, and those are happy to pay more for it because they want quality. And there's always clients that want more quality. So there's three things there. So you have to very quickly work out, all of you, when you're talking to a new client, where your client is on that roadmap. There are companies who, in the RFP process, send out documents saying it's important, and you tick all the boxes. SANS goes and does a great job, and then afterwards it's never heard again. Right? So there's people that, there's a mixed message. What I'm seeing as a trend, that shift from I send out the tick box and then never look at it again, to actually making sure it's implemented, is changing. So there's a shift on clients, especially procurement departments all around the world, going, okay, you said you're going to do it. Now show me you're going to do it. It's actually in the contract. If you don't do it, it costs you money. So the work I do, just on work I do with big agencies and big brands, and that, we are moving it to contractual. It's contractual now. You can't say you're going to do it and not do it anymore. So there's a shift there. That's one thing. So you need to train your salespeople to quickly identify where the client is, then position the right product to them. If the client doesn't care, do not mention sustainability. Carry on doing what you do because it's important to you and your brand, but you're not going to talk about it in terms of using the S word. So there's a shift here in the market of talking about sustainability without using S word. Okay. So we can talk about energy efficiency, we can talk about, better recycling, we can talk about how that makes a difference to the bottom line, but we're not going to say it's more sustainable because that will turn them off. So again, you have to train your salespeople how to do that. The second group, you can talk about sustainability, maybe not using the S word so much, but you're going to talk about benefits to them, right? We engage more with our local community. It means we have a greater connection with our local players. That means we can help you connect with people in a better way. Brilliant. We could offer community engagement projects to your clients as activities in an event, which means they get to connect with the local people, which is what travelers, visitors want to do when they come to a place normally. So, again, reposition. Remember, but then you got the third one. So quickly, you got to train your sales people to work out this client really cares. So then you got to come out and go, we have this package. We have these super you want to use S word in everything then, right? Super sustainable, really regenerative, blah, 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 blah. So
as good salespeople, this shouldn't be too difficult. We know we're trained naturally to know the difference between features and benefits. So what you're really saying, Guy, is look, do what we know as salespeople really well, which is to emphasize the benefit. What you've got to figure out is where does sustainability, what is the communication, words, the styles, the evidence that's going to resonate with that particular client.
And that's what we've got to get much better at. So, it's great. I'm saying I have a sustainable hotel. SANS, right? Or the Venetian, right? They're ISO certified. I help implement that. I know that. I know they do amazing well. But what does that mean to the client?
Yeah.
How good are we saying we're ISO certified? That means sustainability or environmental social practices are integrated through our business. It's easy for you to come here. It's less work for you to come here. We make it seamless for you. Oh, less risk, less time. How can we find those kind of words to make this relevant? And I don't think we're always very good. And I guess I definitely haven't been good at this in the past. I've often made sustainability too complex, too, what do you say? You kind of stand on in English, we say you stand on your soapbox and you kind of complain. You evangelize like
Evangelist,
a religious leader. Yeah, time for that is over, right?
Yeah. So Guy, I mean, it was very reassuring. You used the phrase there just on that point about, perfection is not what you're looking for. And we might have got confused in the past of having perfection, should I say. But what we do need to show is evidence of change and be able to back up that evidence. So where do we start? So let me ask you
right.
a big question then. So what's the hardest shift for an organization, that's moving from sustainability in a more dedicated way into a real regenerative delivery? I mean, showing what they are doing.
It's funny. I have to tell the audience that Pat has not seen my slides, but my next slide is an answer to your question.
Fantastic. We're so aligned. It's brilliant.
So a key trend is an increased focus on regeneration. Coming to your question, it means our priority has how do we shift mindsets? We have to have the shift of mindset from a degenerative, we can do everything, we don't care what the impact on it, to a sustainable mindset. Many of the people in this call are already on that. So they're doing less bad. They're minimizing impacts, right? And that's great. But we need to go to the next step, which is a regenerative mindset, is that how do we not only minimize impacts, but how do we create more positive impacts? Simple example, right? We can reduce our energy usage. We can put some solar panels on, or we can put enough solar panels on our roof that we're actually producing more energy than we actually use. That's a simple way of thinking of regeneration. We can think of another one, recycling, right? We can throw everything away. We can build a stand and throw it all away. That's degenerative. Waste goes to landfill, costs money. Sustainable is we can start to recycle things and we throw away less. And regenerative is that we build the stand from old plastic, right? Recycled materials. We reuse it constantly. And if we are going to give it away because it looks old or we changed our brand, we give it to an organization, a school, a university who's going to reuse those materials for something. So it improves, it adds back to the community, to business, to your own organization. So there's a mindset shift that needs to go on, right? And you can kind of think of it like this. We go from conventional way of working, so we start thinking of the green, sustainable, we start thinking of sustainable social aspects. Restorative, we start thinking, how do we improve our, the nature around our hotels and the seas and the communities and the people, to somewhere where we go to this mindset, which is thriving. It's about everything we do is actually making Macau a better place to live. It's less about consumption, it's about co-creation. It's about, not just about marketing, it's about stewarding and making a place a better place to live. And that events and tourism are catalysts for social and environmental change, not just economic benefit for some people. So this is an exciting narrative, right? It's much more exciting than, I believe, sustainable and don't do this and don't do this and don't do that. This is, let's do that. Let's do it together, because if we do it together, we make Macau a more resilient place. We have a stronger community. We make our businesses more competitive. People come here and transformed and want to come back. We help everyone. It's more inclusive. Everyone in the community benefits from this. We don't leave people behind. And that's a regenerative approach. And that's really exciting. So I'll give you a couple of examples, right? So just a simple one. Up the road from you, a place you know very well, is Belfast. So I worked a lot with Belfast in in Ireland, in the Northern Ireland. They wanted to change how tourism events supported the community. So we created a program called Changing the Menu for Good. And in this program, we looked at events, and events just in Macau had big menus, right? 4 or 5 courses. And we said, how about we create a program that one of those courses you can donate to charity? Why? There's a lot of hungry people in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. The costs have gone up. There's a lot of people that just can't keep up with the change. And so having to rely on food donations from food banks. So we create this initiative where one of the courses is donated. So that percentage of money is given to a food bank. So far, well, last time I checked was 56,000. It's probably about 70,000 meals have been provided. But this has changed how people think, how people react. They work as a community. This was one simple thing, but it's really changed the mind shift. So this has now been copied and shared. Last time I checked, it's been rolled out to Manchester, Durham, Cambridge, Ottawa in Canada, and a lot of people. So this is a great simple thing, right? But this type of regenerative impact can go much more deeper. So here's an example from where I live in Barcelona. World Parkinson's Congress, big congress, 20,000 people or something, and they come to town. The unusual thing with this congress is over 50% of the people come are actually patients or people who have Parkinson's. So they're sufferers, right? And I often come into a place, and I remember talking to a taxi driver, and he said, well, one of these Parkinson's sufferers got into the car, and I thought he was drunk or he was on drugs. I didn't understand he had Parkinson's. So there's an issue here, right? There's an issue that people don't understand Parkinson's. And these organizers wanted to work and created a partnership with Barcelona, with Barcelona Tourism and the event organizers to go out and train. So they went out and trained firefighters, the airport people, taxi drivers, the police, to understand what Parkinson sufferers, what it meant, what it had to go through, how to work with them, how to support them. So they went out and trained all these people across Barcelona, and it's wonderful, and it's really good. So now the police, the airport people, I met a policeman who'd been through the training, I met a taxi driver who went through the training, and they said they just understood how to do that. So there's a social impact, right? It's making Barcelona a better place to live. It's more inclusive. It means if you have not just Parkinson's, but dementia, any of those other neuro kind of diseases or infirmities, you're more welcome in Barcelona. And that's one thing we want, right? Places that are welcoming. So I love this. So I think this is a great example of an impact program, of regenerative program, how to make our place better to live. I could talk for hours on this, but I'm just going to leave that as a kind of example of what you said, how you shift to that regenerative thinking.
And Guy, I mean, they're fantastic examples. I love them. They're very practical and they impact positively the local population as well as those who are the delegates who are attending the event. So, you spoke about the need for less zealots, less, preaching and more honesty. And I can see the positives and reduction of costs and also positive social impact. But can you tell us some examples from your vast experience about, where there are trade-offs, where those trade-offs come and we need to acknowledge them, but they're worth it because they're part of an intentional design to deliver something which is better?
Yeah, I think when you start, some of this stuff has a cost, right? You think about solar panels. When I asked for a quote to put solar panels in my house 15 years ago, and they said 40 grand, 40,000 euros. Okay, I'm like, no, thank you. Right? I did it 6 years ago, and it cost me 10,000 euros, and it was worthwhile. Now the same project costs 5,000 euros. So market demand changes costs. And this is the type of thing, right? Some of this work, if you want to put, I don't know, some things like organic food. We want to have all of our food at the event organic, which is great. It's healthy, it's regenerative, it gives back. And we want it to be local organic, even better, right? You know, that's going to cost you more money. Some clients might pay for that, remember. So don't say no immediately. Say to the client, is this something you're prepared to pay for? Yeah, because there are clients definitely will pay for that, but the majority maybe won't. So that's the first question. The second thing, it's like, well, you know, I can't do that. It's not black or white. So it's in the summer. I can probably get organic apples from Guangzhou or somewhere like that. And they're at the same price because there's loads of apples in the market. Or I can definitely get sustainable organic coffee and tea for the same price. So let's integrate that. So you can start to make decisions, whether it's food or whether it's signage, that is better, more sustainable products. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. So let's get away from that. Let's make it perfect. But let's be specific. So we say 80% of our food is local. 20% of our food is local. That's brilliant. If it was 0 before. So more specific, more numbers to back it up, more honesty. Don't say we're the most sustainable thing. That doesn't matter. And this is much harder often in an Asian context where it's all about, often culture is about looking really good. It's okay not to be perfect.
So that will address that unfortunate, that cynicism which seems to be, you know, abroad regarding many things in life today, that where our first mindset is, I'm not sure whether this is real or whether it's behind. So communication, so that's a big change, Guy, isn't it? So I keep overhearing again and again the need for evidence, the need for communicating, and the need for honesty and starting.
Yeah, and I think this comes to our last kind of bonus trend here is really there's going to be a need for more training. There is a trend in training. What is good is there's a trend in more aligned training. We're going to see more organizations coming together. So we are just about to launch something which we're really excited about, which is the Net Zero Carbon Events Academy. And this is with the Joint Meetings in the Council, so the JMIC. So remember, that's the body of many associations, 14 or 15 associations at ICA, UFI, and they're all coming together to align around a standard way of training. There's a chance that may align with the Events Industry Council training. So then we have a global way of looking at things. So we're seeing all this type of joined up thinking. So one, there's a trend and we need to train our people. Two, let's make more common agendas and curriculums in the industry. And so that's going to happen. And I think this is really kind of exciting. So I guess these are kind of the summary of those trends that we were talked about. I guess in the minutes we got left now, it's what does that mean for Macau, right? What does that mean and what do we need to do?
And where might you start for if you want to make that one, that one significant.
Brilliant. Good. So hold that question, come back to me in a second with that, because that's an important one. So I think, for organizers, we're going to have to get better at issuing the RFPs. As event organizers, you're going to get more RFPs. So how do you get better at replying to those? How do you build up your practices? How do you improve your AI systems to answer that? You need to get better at your supplier engagement, proactively, not reactively. You need to build up those teamworks. You need to not just put sustainability in a little box in the corner. It needs to be weaved through, which is a key thing. When sustainability is integrated, it's not an add-on task. It's not more job. It's not the job of one person. It's a little bit of everyone's job. It becomes much easier. Someone like the Galaxy or Sands knows that and how they run the hotels. They've weaved it through everyone. For suppliers, such as the hotels and the venues, you're going to have to support organizers with more usable information. If I come, if I was at ESC or SAP, I did a big event for SAP in Macau. Trying to get the data from the suppliers was really hard. It took, it's like pulling teeth. But now I can take that same event to other places in the world. And as soon as I finished, I get a beautiful report. So it's carbon emissions, community hours, volunteer hours. It gives everything I need, and I just take that and I can use that in my report and then issue that to my stakeholders, in this case, SAP. So you've got to really help. You've got to make it easier as a supplier, right? And it's simple data beats glossy claims, right? Certification is good. That builds credibility and it's better over fancy marketing language. So there's a lot of just making it easier. For the destination, this requires a shift because there's some tough stuff here. So destination CVBs who used to just focus on promotion have to really shift to performance support, helping the supply chain, both the clients and the suppliers shift, right, and become more regenerative. So collaboration becomes more of a kind of key here. Data readiness, having data to back up your slogans. So there's a kind of a big shift around those. Everyone has to do a little bit. Now that's the key thing. It's sustainability regeneration is really, it's a collaborative advantage if you do it well. But you've got to have the collaboration to do it well. Right? So there's kind of a thing. So what are some destinations doing now to kind of catalyze this and build the credibility? So many destinations are working really well. We do something called the GDS index, right? Which is a way of actually measuring this and how well a destination is moving. 151 destinations around the world have gone through this program. It's a kind of way to assess and benchmark how well a city or a destination is doing on environmental, social areas, on the supply chain, so the airports, the venues, the restaurants, hotels, and lastly, how the CVB is working on sustainability. So we go and we look at 77 areas, and there's third party assessed to look at how well this is working, and then the destination gets data. So those are the 4 areas, plus a total here, the green, of each of 3 destinations. I'm just going to pick on these 3. So Bangkok, Singapore, and Melbourne, close-ish to Macau and competitors to Macau. So, we can see that, Singapore's doing an amazing job here, socially, not so good environmentally. Supply chain is pretty good, but not as good as Melbourne. The DMO is better than Melbourne. But that's nice to know, benchmarking. But what they can do then is look back on that year by year by year. It helps them give them targets, helps them know what they need to do next year. Helps them look and say, how come, Melbourne's doing such a good job on, I don't know, on the social sustainability. Why are they doing that well? So we can look to practices and destinations start to come together and work together. So this is super exciting. So we see this. And these are just the top 40. We can see how well Singapore, Kumamoto, Songkla, there's Goyang in Korea, Melbourne, Sydney. There's a lot of places in that region are doing really well. And why do they do it well? Is because they're working as a team. They've actually, these places are moving on that shift to regeneration and really are working as a team, to make this a shift. So that's the kind of the end of the slides. I just want to summarize a couple of things. So, for me, it's, for 2026, your goals should be, how do you make sustainability integrated? So it's about better planning, more efficiency, looking where you save costs. How do you make sustainability as a marker of your brand professionalism? It's just part of the brand, right? And it's got to be a key part. How do you use regeneration, a regenerative mindset as a catalyst, not only business transformation and innovation, but societal transformation, how you give back to your local community and your local destination? And then how does Macau as a team look at this as a collective advantage, as a collaborative advantage, not as individual businesses? And I think that, coming back to where we started, is, Coldplay went on tour and they didn't just play music. They played a new story, right? And that story turned rhythm into regeneration. And that's who they are. And Coldplay have catalyzed a shift in the music industry. We see Billie Eilish doing this. We see Massive Attack. We see all the big stars now integrating sustainability into their big concerts because of the way Coldplay led this. So I think, stepping back, the destinations that will lead tomorrow are those that regenerate today, and that, just like Coldplay, is really the exciting stuff, right? And this is really where we can go into the future. So that's it, man. That's kind of a little summary.
Fantastic, guy. So you've painted, I mean, you've painted an incredibly motivating picture. Um, but I think that the big change, if I might say, is you've painted a picture which is very realistic and is possible to achieve. So I love what you're doing with Jimmick and the training. I think this is a really academy. Tell me a little bit more about that academy that you've created. I think that's a good way of making sure everybody is aligned to really leverage the cooperation.
Yeah, so it's the ways of doing things and new initiatives all around the world, but they're not really aligned. So it gets a bit confusing and complex. Um, that's one thing. Secondly, there's really great tools. So the Net Zero Carbon Events Academy has a wonderful set of tools. Kind of the knowledge base, you could call it. But they weren't teaching it and they're training it. So we sat down and said, how about we take what we're good at, academy and training people, and your content and create a new program. But let's not just do one level, let's do kind of a journey, right? So you start off and there'll be a level one course, which will be, it's online learning, a few short practices, and it could be for everyone. That could be for the team in catering or the junior project managers, just an understanding what sustainable net zero means in terms of running events. Then there's a second level class, and this is face-to-face learning or online learning, but it's kind of it's about 8 hours of learning. It's really getting to grips. What does this mean for me? How do I integrate it? How do I use the tools? How do I do a report? How do I communicate? How do I answer a question from a client who cares or doesn't care? What if I get pushback? So we role play and play with that. And then that's the course we hope to bring to Macau in the next few months. And then there's the third level, which is kind of the mastery level. And that's for the directors of sustainability of PCOs or hotels or event organizers. And that's the kind of certified level. That's where you get your badge and you're now a certified sustainability leader. So yeah, it's super exciting. That's just coming out. We're in conversations about bringing it to Macau. So fingers crossed that happens.
Fantastic.
But there's a need for that all around the world.
Absolutely, and I think you've really shown that the need to have measurable, credible data and training obviously gives everybody a common understanding. Guy, unfortunately, we're running rapidly as we always do. We only really get started after we get all the slides through and we start that dialogue. But as you look into the future for Macau, in 3 years' time, you know the region. And interesting that you picked Bangkok and also Singapore, and particularly Bangkok is a competitor that's always out there, and Melbourne is certainly a comparator, something that we always look to keep our eyes on what's happening in best practice. What's the potential for Macau? Where do you see, not in 5 years' time, but certainly in the window of 3 years? What's your best advice?
So if I look at Asia, I think some of the greatest movement and change is happening in Asia at a global level, right? So, and we know that because we have data. We can look at the GDS index and we can see this shift that Bangkok, Singapore, Goyang, and then the Australian cities have done as well. Japan, there's a shift happening. It's happening faster in Asia, which is super exciting. It's getting easier and cheaper to do a lot of that in Asia because of Asian and especially Chinese political strategies and business strategies. So don't forget you have a big competitive advantage. So that's one thing. You have the political advantage, you have the momentum, the initiative from the Chinese government to do that. So that's the second one. I think this is such an opportunity. This is such a great opportunity. It's, you've got everything. It's cheaper to do in your region. You've got political support. You don't have 100% of the clients there behind you, but you got to make your market, right? You got to, Apple didn't go out and ask everyone if they wanted an iPhone. They went and launched an iPhone and said, this is what you need, right? We have to make it sexy and compelling and part of professionalism, part of the Macau experience. And it's definitely possible in 3 years. So my hope, my vision is we look at the GDS index, we're going to see Macau in the top 40, maybe in the top 20 in 3 years, right? Who knows? But we've got to get them at the top 40. Macau's got to stand up, got to make a commitment to this, to training, to integration, to innovation. How do we just use sustain as a catalyst, right? We look at we look at the BYD cars. They're not just a sustainable electric car. It's just a better driving experience. So that's the kind of mentality we've got to have.
Well, listen, having had the privilege of visiting Macau now regularly over the last number of years and knowing the people of EPAM and I suppose the community, ambition is not something that's lacked at all, and certainly ambition to be at the right level and to have that kind of dream come true. So I think your final line, which you did use, simple data beats glossy claims. Let's be real. Let's start now, but let's have in our sights a very high standard. Guy Bigwood, as always, it's such an education, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Look forward to seeing you in Macau soon.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Thank you, Macau team, for inviting me. Wishing you all a great day.
Take care. Bye bye.